Hello, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you, as always, by Inside the Penguins. I'm your host, Nick Berlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat, and let us be among the first to wish you a very happy Memorial Day. We hope everybody enjoyed the long weekend, enjoying their Monday off, and also we salute everybody that lays out their lives to serve the country of the United States of America. So happy Memorial Day to everybody around the country. And happy Monday, because it's always a great Monday when nobody has to go to work. Well, most people don't have to go to work. I don't want to assume that you're listening to this on your day off.
I'm going to work today. I have to work on this Monday. So
yes.
Yeah, no, some people got to go to work. Some people got to pay the bills. And but that is what it is. Yes, happy Memorial Day to everyone. And let's roll along with the episode. We got a couple Penguin things to talk about.
We do. Luckily for us, there are two very high-profile former Pittsburgh Penguins that are hitting the open market this offseason, so we figured we're going to probably discuss it a couple times. Let's just get out ahead of it, talk about it at the onset, and discuss these two Penguins legends, if you will. One for meme reasons, one for actual reasons, in my opinion. But you know we're talking about Marc-Andre Fleury and Phil Kessel. Both of them scheduled to become unrestricted free agents in the summertime. Horwat, the main question that I'm going to ask you is, which would you rather see return to the city of Pittsburgh?
I'm going to say Phil Kessel is the one I'd rather see return, and there's a couple of great reasons for it that I'm sure I'll get into. But mostly, I just think the Fleury thing is it's not time yet, man. He's still a starting caliber goalie, and sure, 1A, 1B works great, and we can get into this discussion later. Mm-hmm. That's just not what this team needs right now, and it's not what Tristan Jarry needs with the momentum he's carrying as the starter at this moment.
So. Yeah, that's fair, and I'm sure we'll get into the minutia of that.
Yeah.
I would rather see Marc-Andre Fleury return though. I would. Of the two, I would. Not that there's anything wrong with Phil Kessel. And honestly, I may leave the door open for both of them by the end of this segment. I'll see how my discussion starts to permeate in my brain. But I would rather see Marc-Andre Fleury because you said he's still a starting caliber goaltender. I understand that, but the end of the road is coming for Fleury a lot quicker than it's coming for Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. We're talking about those guys having 3 more years, and that's what they're looking at. Marc-Andre Fleury had thought about retirement after this season. So if he's coming back on a 1-year deal, I would much rather see Marc-Andre Fleury, even if it's a 1A, 1B situation. I don't think there's any way in which he should be the starter over Tristan Jarry next season. But if he comes in and is the 1B, I know fans are going to clamor for him to get more starts. But if Mike Sullivan is able to control that situation, then I'd much rather have Marc-Andre Fleury if I had to choose between the two.
Fans absolutely would be clamoring for it first, but I just feel that regardless of that situation, it's because you look at the numbers he put up. Sure, let's take the playoffs out of it because playoff Fleury is still playoff Fleury.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get. That's a coin flip.
Yeah, but post trade to Minnesota, because you really also shouldn't take the Chicago stuff into these discussions just because he was in Chicago. There was a lot of things going on in Chicago. Not even just on the ice. There was just utter nonsense happening that he shouldn't have been there in the first place. I think when the trade happened, we said on this podcast, he has every right, not even for the play on the ice, to say no to this trade. But he was classy enough, said, I will go play in Chicago. And for what it's worth, he may have been the highlight of their season.
Yeah.
And then the trade to Minnesota happened, and then he went, oh, yes, 9-2. Yeah, no, Marc-Andre Fleury is definitely still, even at the age of 37, somehow still a starting caliber goalie. And again, I get the 1A, 1B situation is fun for a short period of time. And sure, it paid off into 2 Stanley Cups with Marc-Andre Fleury being one of those guys. But it was a different time because Marc-Andre Fleury was the starter, definite starter. But we had to pull up Matt Murray because of an injury to Marc-Andre Fleury. Matt Murray continued his momentum that he had in the AHL and then just kind of usurped the role. That was the 16 year. And then in the 17 year, we realized we can play both of them because one of them's still a rookie, can still fall apart at any time. while it was a 1A, 1B situation, that's how it was in retrospect. In the moment, I feel like we were still looking at it as Fleury's kind of the starter here, maybe turning to the backup.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt Murray is still a young goalie who, goaltending is voodoo, could fall apart at any moment.
Yeah.
It was just a little delayed. So in retrospect, I think we look back at it as, yeah, it was definitely a 1A, 1B because they were both so highly skilled for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, if looking back at it now, if we would have said Matt Murray fell apart, we ended up losing whenever, maybe not even making the playoffs in 17 because Matt Murray couldn't get it done. Well, then we look at it as, yeah, Fleury sticks around. It's all revisionist history.
Yeah.
But essentially 1A, 1B is what we had, but we look back at it as that way. Whereas we have a definite number one now in Tristan Jarry, who's gaining so much momentum as the starting goalie in this town.
Yeah.
I forget what his contract is at the moment, but still has a couple years left in this town as the starting goalie.
He has 1 season left. He's going into a contract year.
And hey, you got to give him his full reps then.
You really don't, because at the end of the day, I like Tristan Jarry. I'm saying he is the number one guy, even with Marc-Andre Fleury. But if you need something to push him, look at the last 2 postseasons. What has killed the Penguins? Tristan Jarry couldn't get it done last postseason. He was awful, abysmal, and there was nobody behind him. It was Maxime Lagacé. They didn't have somebody else to go to. And then this season, Jarry was injured. Casey DeSmith gets injured for the 2nd straight postseason, and you're down to Louis Domingue. This is a league where unless you have an Andre Vasilevsky, a Jacob Markstrom type guy, you need 2 good goaltenders. I'm not going to bang on Casey DeSmith and say that he's not good, but he has not been available. And as a backup or a 1B, the best ability is availability. And he hasn't been there when the time is most important for him the last 2 seasons. So you know what I say? Bring in Fleury, make him be the 1B. Listen, Mike Sullivan should not care about the fans, and the fans can do whatever they want. If Fleury comes in to be the 1B at the age of 37 and wants one last season to end his career where it started and where he played the majority of a Hall of Fame career, I say you do it. For 1, because it's a great PR move.
Yes.
For 2, because he's extremely talented. And for 3, because that is an area of need. Because the last 2 postseasons, this Pittsburgh Penguins team is a team that could have gone on a run, but hasn't because of injuries to goaltenders and lack of depth. I like what they have in the minors. I like Lindbergh. I like the guy they just signed from the WHL that I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I like who else is over there? Blomqvist just came over. I like what they have in the minors on the way up, but it's not going to be ready by next season. No. So if you need a 1-year guy, a 1-year bridge to that younger generation of goaltenders to come up behind Tristan Jarry, there's nobody better, in my opinion, than Marc-Andre Fleury.
Here's what I'll say. When you say that, who did we have as backup in the last few years in the playoffs? I still don't think I'd take Fleury as a backup in the playoffs. We've seen his playoff performances over the years. For what it's worth in his career, he's a 9-12 in the playoffs, by the way.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it is a coin flip, and you could get the bad side, the 2013 side. You could get what we saw in the first round this year by the Minnesota Wild, or you could get 2017 first 2 rounds, Marc-Andre Fleury. You could get 2018 the entire playoffs with Vegas, Marc-Andre Fleury. And what I'm saying is, you would not take Fleury over Louis Domingue.
So absolutely, I would take Fleury over Louis Domingue. I would take Fleury back. There has to be multiple conditions to this, though. I would. It just has to be literally the 1-year deal. He has to accept being the full-time backup, not 1A, 1B. No, the B, the 2.
When has that ever been an issue?
I'd say, man, if you remember 2017, he didn't like being backup in 2017.
But he did it.
Because he's a classy gentleman.
Correct.
We talked, but the entire discussion all year was, hey, when are we trading Fleury? Because we may as well get a return for him. I mean, thankfully we didn't, but still, there's no way. I mean, Alan Walsh, his agent, will probably never. I'd have to re-listen to that interview that he did with Fleury. I don't think they were perfectly okay with him sitting back up, especially. I mean, that year he was 32. He was still in his goaltending prime and still able to be a top-tier goalie, but he was getting sat down for Matt Murray. I'd have to find the numbers again on that season. 17. He played 38 games.
He got injured. That's the only reason Murray got the opportunity.
Yeah. No, 17, 16, 17. Whenever they were both 1A, 1B.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, okay, so Murray played 49 that year. Fleury played 38. Mike Condon played a game. And Tristan Jarry also played a game. Mm-hmm. So there was not, I mean, he was the backup that season. If looking at the sheer numbers of it, they both had 10 losses, but also Fleury wasn't as good. He was 18, 10, and 7.
Yeah.
But he still had that ability, especially if you look at the next season where he carried the brand new Vegas Golden Knights and really carried. He was injured too, to the Stanley Cup Finals. I don't know. Goaltending is such voodoo. I think it's hard to really say. Like I said, it would have to be the 1 year again. It would have to be a cheap deal, by the way. Like I'm talking.
That's the thing. You're not going to sign Marc-Andre Fleury for $5 million and be able to have an actual team on the ice. If Fleury's coming back, it has to be on a very, very team-friendly deal. And it has to be with the understanding, like you said, that it is his last season and he's coming back to be able to finish where he started and go for a chance at another cup with the guys that he grew up around the game with. Crosby, Malkin, Letang. If they can bring all of those guys back for one last run, I think Fleury, and here's the thing you're saying, he was upset in 2017. Who's to say he wouldn't be upset now? The situations are so vastly different. He is 37 years old now. He is mulling over retirement as we speak. He doesn't even know if he's coming back next season. It is coming back to play with those guys. It is a different situation, and it is with the understanding that when it happened in 2017, Fleury still felt that he had a lot left to give to this organization. 2023, Fleury's already mulling retirement. He's probably just saying, I want to finish it where I started. He never wanted to leave Pittsburgh in the first place. We know that. But he went to Vegas. He said, all right, I like it here. Never wanted to leave Vegas again. Wanted to end his career in Vegas. Yeah. They burned that bridge with him. And last year, he played out the rest of his contract like a good little goaltender. And now he has the option to do whatever he wants.
Could have just called him a gentleman, man. That was weird.
Good little goaltender.
You're right.
He was the good little boy. Sit in my corner, do what I was signed on to do, and then I'll make my decision after the season. And that's what he's put himself in the position to do. And if the Penguins are the destination he wants to go, I'm sure he would work with Hextall to make it worth his while, especially with the understanding that they have moved on. The Penguins have moved on and don't need Fleury as their starter, but they certainly do need a good backup goaltender, especially if you look at the way that they've been dispatched in the last two postseasons.
520 career wins. How close is he to?
He's not catching Brodeur or Roy.
He's not all time marks. Just anyone else. Is he third, and that's going to stay third?
He's third.
Cool.
Yeah.
300, almost 299 career losses. You can slip a third, one more in there. I hate that you're talking me into it, just because I do still feel adamantly that Kessel's the better option. I mean, the better option between the two, and I don't know, man. Just the way goaltending is. We know Fleury, despite being 38, going to be 38, still has that starting caliber in him somehow. Mm-hmm. There aren't too many conditions to it. Like, you'd have to tell him, like, if you're going to be the backup here, you might play backup number games. Like, how many did DeSmith and Domingue play this year in the regular season total?
DeSmith finished, Domingue played in one game. Casey DeSmith finished 11-6-5, which is what? 22 games,
and he had to finish off the season for us.
Yes,
I mean, I'd tell Fleury you're gonna play about 20 games.
No, that was the issue with Jarry. The issue with Jarry is they overused him early on. If it wasn't for the injury, they would have continued to overuse him, and DeSmith would have had 18 or 17 starts. If you're Marc-Andre Fleury, you say, hey, you are going to get exactly 32 starts. The other 50 go to Jarry. That is a split that keeps both guys healthy. That is a split that keeps both guys rested. And that is a split that keeps both guys happy because they both get a good amount of playing time. And I think it helps out the team as well. As I look, and you did get muted there for a quick second, but I do have to just, when I look at this, I do agree with you though. There has to be certain things in place. Jarry is still the starter. and will continue to be the starter. And the other thing with Tristan Jarry is he is heading into that contract season, as we mentioned. So the big question for Hextall is, will this push Jarry more to be better in net, like we saw when it was Jarry and Murray? Murray's ability to take that spot whenever pushed Tristan Jarry to be much better in that first year that he was an all-star. Or will it mess with his psyche? I think Jarry has the mental fortitude to take this on and still get better and better. But it is a question that you have to ask if you're on Hextall. I think it'll be perfectly fine.
I would absolutely assume that just because it's a contract year, he would heighten his play a little and become a better goaltender. Because we saw it with Letang this year. These guys know when it's their contract year. They know when they're about to make big money. And Letang did it at the age of 35, that freak.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel weird. Just because goaltending is so weird, they're all mentally weird people.
Yeah.
I think, I'm okay with Fleury coming back with all those conditions that I've laid out if things just have to match up correctly there. Otherwise, I mean, if he wants to be a starter somewhere, if he thinks he can still do that, it shouldn't be here then. That's my thought process. So it's whatever he wants, he should get. If he wants to still be a starter in the NHL, if he thinks he could still play the 50 plus games, whatever it may be, then he shouldn't be coming here. That's on him then, if he comes here expecting to be the starter again, because he's not going to be. And I think that's the drawback. He also can probably still make a damn good amount of money.
Somebody would pay him if he wants it.
Exactly. So if he also thinks that if him and Alan Walsh still think that he can make a ton of money somewhere, he should absolutely go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as big a Fleury fan as they come, but I'm a big Fleury fan in general and appreciate everything he's done for the Penguins over the years and just how much fun he's had with this team. But for the better of him, if he wants something that we're not willing to offer him, he shouldn't. The Penguins and himself should not force this to happen. Yeah. I think that's kind of the point that I have not gotten to this entire time is if Fleury thinks he could still be a starter, if he still wants to, if he still has that ability, he shouldn't come here to do it. Yeah. Because I don't want to see a 1A, 1B here, especially with Jarry in a contract year who might be able to do great things. I don't want to see Fleury just tank his value here. Sure, it's maybe the last year of his career, maybe the last one or two. But you're trying to close out a Hall of Fame career whenever the Hockey Hall of Fame is weird with goalies, and he's third in wins all time, and there's legitimate discussion that he might not be a Hall of Famer. That's so wild to me. He needs to close out a Hall of Fame career. Don't get me wrong. Again, he has said no to Washington. If he does play somewhere for a different team, it's not going to be in this division. It might not be in this conference. And I'm glad you brought that up because the reason that I actually want to give this a little bit of oxygen, I actually want to talk about the possibility of Fleury coming back is there have been rumors, preliminarily, the one that I heard was from Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts, the podcast, that is why he refused to go back to Washington because he wanted to keep the door open to possibly come back to Pittsburgh, and he didn't want to do that after going to Washington. He didn't want to alienate the fans of the Pittsburgh Penguins before potentially trying to come back. So it's something that's on his mind. Yeah. And if he's going into the last year of his career, he is an unrestricted free agent. It is the last year of Tristan Jarry's contract. It just lines up very well. And the last thing I'll say about this, last year, he played preliminarily for a really bad Chicago Blackhawks team. Yeah, that's why I didn't even look at those numbers. Finished with 28 wins on the season combined, a .908 save percentage, .290 goals allowed average, and 4 shutouts. Playing for a team that bad and putting up those type of numbers at the age of 37 is impressive. He still has it, and you can't tell me that if it came across the screen right now, Penguins agree to terms with Marc-Andre Fleury on a 1-year, $2 million deal, you wouldn't be happy about it. I would have to see details and just have to see details. It is a 1-year deal. Whenever I say details, I mean the mental details. He has fully accepted the fact. I need Alan Walsh when he's fully accepted the fact he's going to be the number 2. You need a psyche eval on Alan Walsh more than you need a psyche eval on Marc-Andre Fleury, don't you? Both of them, because I don't want to see that damn sword picture again. Yeah. Especially with it being his hometown, if you will, team. Yeah. So don't get me wrong. I would absolutely like to see him back. Yes. I think in the discussion that we were trying to have that we seem to have completely abandoned and can get back to in a moment.
Yeah.
I like the idea of Phil Kessel over Marc-Andre Fleury because, again, because I'll just say it one last time. If Fleury wants to still be a starter, he can go do that somewhere. If he wants to make one more last payday, he can go do that somewhere. Neither of those things can happen here. That's the point that I make. Whereas with Phil Kessel, hey, you know what? Let's say Malkin doesn't return. Suddenly, we have an open forward spot, and the guy you fight with quite often won't be around.
Yeah.
And that could get fun because, I mean, you called him a meme legend in this town. No, he put up his best career numbers here. He's a legitimate legend in this town.
Yeah, but when you talk about legends in the Pittsburgh Penguins history, Kessel is a lot further down the list than Marc-Andre Fleury is.
For sure.
Like Marc-Andre Fleury is the greatest goaltender in Pittsburgh Penguins history.
Oh, for sure.
I'm sure there's a couple people that will try to argue Barrasso, but
still,
yeah, there's still a couple people that always say that Barrasso is still better, and I don't understand it. But nonetheless, let's talk a little bit about Phil Kessel, because we talked for 20 minutes about Marc-Andre Fleury, and the people that hate Fleury are probably already tuned out. So let's talk about Phil Kessel. Initially, the Penguins traded Kessel back in 2019 for Pierre-Olivier Joseph and Alex Galchenyuk. POJ, we already talked about, might be making his full-time NHL debut, like as a full-time roster player next season. We'll have extensive conversations about that. Kessel last season in 82 games played, as per usual, 8 goals, but still 52 points. You said his best career seasons in Pittsburgh were in Pittsburgh, and guess what he did in Pittsburgh? He went from being just a sniper to being a really good facilitator. He's continued that. 52 points in 82 games played is still a very good middle six guy, and he's already played with Malkin. That's my biggest question about Phil Kessel. I don't think there's any door for this to be open because he had a rift with Evgeny Malkin. He had a rumored rift with Mike Sullivan. He certainly doesn't play the way that Mike Sullivan likes his wingers to play. So I don't know if those issues will be fixed, but I do think that his skill alone would be okay to be back with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But all the other stuff next to it is what makes me think that Fleury is easily the winner of this debate of which one I would rather see. But I wouldn't mind leaving the door open for Phil Kessel to return at a good price because he is an unrestricted free agent. He's clearly not going to be an $8 million cap hit.
No.
So you're going to get him probably for a little cheaper because it feels like his value around the league is down. Because also, some people don't want to get him because of that Iron Man streak. Because they're like, if we want to bench you, we want to be able to bench you. And we might not be able to with this whole Iron Man streak thing going on because he is going to pass Keith Yandle next season if he plays in every single game. So I could see him returning because of how low his value is and how high his skill still is. But again, if it's between the two, I take Fleury. I don't hate Kessel, but I just think he's less likely.
So do you know how many games behind Keith Yandle he is?
I do not know. I tried to find it this morning, and I started doing other stuff, and I missed it.
I don't think it's far.
I think it's like 20 games or like 18 games or something.
One thing I did not realize that he only scored 8 goals this year. I'm so used to Phil Kessel being a goal scorer. Seeing 8 is baffling.
Well, remember, he also played on the Coyotes.
That's what I was getting at. He was still 3rd on the team in scoring.
Oh, and goal scoring?
Points.
Okay.
Goal scoring, 8th.
Yeah.
Behind Clayton Keller, who led the team in points with 63. My God, this team was bad.
Yeah.
Nick Schmaltz was 2nd with 59. And then there's Phil Kessel with 52 points, 44 assists. We turned him into a playmaker. That led the Coyotes in assists. Sure, 8 goals is not ideal. No, I don't think that's good either. I didn't realize that, but I'm still all about bringing Phil Kessel back, especially if Malkin's not here. Because I think, a rift with a coach, you can get past that, especially when you realize if Malkin's gone, this is going to be a whole new team next year.
Yeah, it's going to look completely different.
So I think Sullivan will have to change his system a little bit. Maybe tend to Kessel a little bit because we're losing Gino. The system's going to have to change a little bit. Because, or more or less, it'll be not brand new, but it'll be a lot of new guys on this roster. Maybe Sullivan will see a bunch of new guys, try out a new system, and it'll tend to Kessel a little more in this. Now, the Iron Man streak, the thing about the Iron Man streak with Kessel and Yandle is Yandle didn't deserve it.
True.
He didn't deserve it in the first place. He wasn't an NHL caliber player going into this last season. Remember when the Florida Panthers had to literally have a strike, basically, to let Keith Yandle play? Because he's not an NHL caliber player. I have ranted and raved about this on this podcast already. I don't want to do it again. The difference here is that Phil Kessel is deserving of it.
Mm-hmm.
He's good enough to do all that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would be an issue if it's only 20 games. I think he'll still be good in 20 games. I think he'll still be NHL caliber to lace up for 20 straight games. I mean, the Coyotes did one good thing this year, and that was let Phil Kessel play a shift before sending him on a chartered flight to go be with his wife.
Yeah.
For the birth of their first kid. Hell yes, that was the only good thing they'd done this year.
Mm-hmm.
Raving about that all year too. I think bringing Kessel in, because I'm fully on the Kessel ride if Malkin is gone, if Letang is gone, because we already have a lot of cap space. I think Kessel won't cost as much as he did. I mean, we didn't pay him a bunch.
No, we didn't pay him $8 million, but that's what his cap hit was.
Right, but he won't cost $8 million.
No, but he will be the more expensive option between the two guys we've talked about.
Absolutely. And that's well deserving too. I mean, in reality, when you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it, I kind of don't want either of them.
There's part of me that doesn't want to reopen that door, because you look back at what the Chicago Blackhawks had done since 2015 and continuously bringing back Andrew Shaw, Patrick Sharp, Brandon Saad, all these guys just returning, and it didn't do anything but prolong how long it would take them to actually start the rebuild.
Right. But I think, and much like the Fleury situation, if you can get Phil Kessel to come back, I mean, he's still a second-line player.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get him to come back for cheap and you can get more than 8 goals out of him, it would already be a success. Just because, well, okay, if he gets 9, that's not a success, but you get what I'm saying. If we can get old Phil Kessel back, it would be a success. Plus, having him beat out Yandle in that Iron Man streak in quick form, this could be a ton of fun, I think. Just the return of Phil Kessel. I can break out my Phil Kessel jersey again and not feel weird about wearing it. Oh my God, I look at the Arizona Coyotes record and just, I cringe.
Yeah.
How is this team not last in the league?
Yeah, they were that bad and they didn't get the first overall pick, but that's fine. They want the first overall pick next year for Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
Which, fair. I would too. I mean, listen, Shane Wright's going to be great, and I understand that, but Connor Bedard is probably going to be a little bit next level other than that. But enough of the Coyotes talk. When I look at Kessel, he's going to be 35 heading into the next season.
Too.
I would obviously do 1 or 2 year deal. I wouldn't want to sign him for longer than that. Less than $5 million.
Yeah.
Less than Brian Rust. You cannot just you cannot sign Phil Kessel for more than you just signed Brian Rust, especially considering Rust took that deal as a team friendly thing to help create space. I understand space for potentially a guy like Kessel, but preliminarily it was for Malkin and for Letang. So I don't know. Here's my thing, and I'm going to write an article about this, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. If they do not bring back one of Malkin or Letang, they should go big game hunting for a specific winger. They should go big game hunting for a winger to begin with, because there's not as many centers on the free agent market. There's a lot of wingers. But there is a specific one I have in mind that I will write an article about. I'm just not going to say it right now.
I will, because I'm writing the same article but adding more people into it. Is one of his names Johnny Gaudreau?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm going to ask you about it after, because I don't want to cross with your article. I know you have one.
I will not list off the rest of my names. But,
yes, there's a teaser. Horwatz includes Johnny Gaudreau.
Yes, mine can also be a center, but we can discuss things later.
Yes.
Yeah, I think just with Phil Kessel, I like the idea of him returning, just because getting the band back together is always fun. Mm-hmm. We don't, and I feel like we would be better than Chicago at it, just because the guys they brought back weren't.
They brought back a fourth liner in Andrew Shaw.
Yeah, and Brandon Saad, who, don't get me wrong, okay, not bad, but that's the one you brought back? I don't know. It just didn't seem like the right choice. Whereas Phil Kessel, I mean, damn, he should have won the Conn Smythe in 16.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Getting the band back together, but you're bringing back your Conn Smythe winner. There should have been Conn Smythe winner. Hey, that's a little different than fourth liner Andrew Shaw. What? No, that's just your locker
Patrick
room
Sharp
glue.
on his farewell tour.
Yeah, that's just your locker room glue. Way to go.
Yeah.
I think we'd be able to do it better. But again, the thing is, for me to really want Phil Kessel to come back, Malkin's got to be out the door too, because we just have a forward spot to fill. And I think it would be a little more attractive for Phil Kessel to come back as well.
Yeah.
Really doesn't help that Rick Tocchet's not a great head coach.
That didn't help there as well. But nonetheless, let's move on from this discussion because we've talked for half an hour on Phil Kessel and Marc-Andre Fleury, and neither of them could be Penguins at the end of the summer. So let's talk a little bit about two guys that were Penguins last season, could be Penguins coming up next season. Really quickly, let's bounce around. DeSmith and Louis Domingue. Should they be re-signed is the question. Both of them are at the age of 30. Let's start with Casey DeSmith. We're going to do our 3Ms, by the way, on Thursday's episode. But both of us had either move on or maybe sign. We're very wishy-washy about these two backup goalies. So we're going to talk about it right now. Casey DeSmith, should he be re-signed as a backup?
No.
I'm
just what were you saying about availability in the playoffs? What's the best availability? 2 years in a row he wasn't. Yeah, no. And not even that, but just tack on the fact that in the NHL, backup goalies don't last very long. They're the journeymen, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what Louis Domingue was until he got here. He's the journeyman. They bounce around teams. Look at Brent Johnson. Look at, I don't know, other backups. They bounce around everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Why is one still here when Casey DeSmith? Nothing against the guy. He's played fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just time to move on and find some fresh blood in the backup field. And if you're thinking Marc-Andre Fleury, all right. It's Casey DeSmith, I think, has just run his course here. He's always injured in the worst times. And it's just the end of the road.
Okay.
Don't even need to dig into numbers or ability of play.
Okay. Well, he's been the backup for 3 seasons for the Pittsburgh Penguins. The one drawback that I have is if that name is not Marc-Andre Fleury, then who is it? Because the last time the Penguins had to go outside the organization to bring in a backup goaltender, it ended up being Antti Niemi, and that was just a train wreck.
Yep.
So, yes, I would agree to move on from Casey DeSmith. I would agree that you need some fresh blood back there, especially to close the gap between where Jari and DeSmith are and where Lindbergh, Blomqvist, again, can't remember the guy's name from the WHL, but those 3 guys are really good. And they could have the potential to be very good backup to potential starting caliber goaltenders. If DeSmith comes back for 1 more year at that same cap hit, I wouldn't hate it, but he has to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. You cannot get hurt in the biggest moments. He's coming off of now what was an MCL injury. So you cannot, or a core muscle surgery is what it was. So you cannot get injured in the worst moments. I know that's not his fault, but it's a sport in which you have to be healthy. You have to be available when you're called upon, especially as a backup goaltender. He was making $1.25 million. I'm fine if he goes back and makes that same amount. He was okay at the end of the season. He picked it up severely because at the beginning of the season, if that's what he's going to bring, then get him out of here. But at the end of the season, he picked it up. He finished 11-6-5, 914 save percentage, 2.79 goals allowed average. He saved it, is what he did. Because if he would have continued to play like he did at the beginning of the season, he would have been on his way out of here before the trade deadline. They would have said, you know what, sit there, be quiet, and you'll be gone. But he picked it up. I believe that if he was healthy, the Penguins would have beaten the Rangers. If he would not have gotten injured in game 1, the Penguins, I think, would have beaten the Rangers. But again, revisionist history because he did get hurt. But I don't know. I would like to change backups. I would like to move on from Casey DeSmith. But the alternative is what scares me. Who is going to come in? Because if it's Louis Domingue, no, Louis Domingue is not a number 2. He's a number 3. So that's where I stand on Casey DeSmith. If the person coming in after him is not named Marc-Andre Fleury or somebody that's closer to a 1B than Casey DeSmith, then why would you be switching in the first place?
So you don't think Louis Domingue's play would have been elevated just by getting a little more playing time in the NHL than 1 game?
No, I don't trust Louis Domingue as a backup.
Interesting.
I don't.
Because I feel like that was one of the things that I was told, that if Louis Domingue had played a little more NHL time and was caught up to NHL speed, it's not to say he would have been better or worse than Casey DeSmith, but there may have been improvements in certain areas because That, I mean, let's be honest. If I look at game five specifically, it's 5. Am I thinking of the right game? No.
Game 5's the road game. You're thinking of game 6, I think.
Yes. Or I'm thinking of game 6 where there were just softies. NHL speed. Let's say you're playing backup all season. You're a little more up to NHL speed. You're up a little bit more on the game and the speed of the game. Maybe you make a couple of saves here and there. Maybe you do close out the series in 6. Hell, let's say we traded away DeSmith, and like I wanted to do then, trade away DeSmith, pull up Domingue as the backup, who then catches some NHL playing time, has to close out the season instead of DeSmith. You know, maybe who knows where that excuse me, who knows where that playoff series goes, because he's caught up to game speed, because he had been catching NHL shots most of the season, or for the back half of the season. Maybe it goes the same place, sure, because that was the other point contention too, was DeSmith is at a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
Domingue, even with the AHL, still at about that same level. I don't know. I just feel that I'm not saying Domingue needs to come back either. I'm just saying that there are points where maybe Domingue could have been given a better opportunity going into that series. But I think as for a new backup, man, I got to find who's going to be available for one, but also just, I don't know. I think it's just time for completely fresh blood in that goaltending room, aside from obviously Jari. But I don't know. I think Domingue would have been better off had he been in the NHL a little bit longer.
Here's the thing, and I don't mean to offend you, but I think that is complete and total horse crap, because guess what? He was fine early on in the season. He was shaky, but he was fine. The fact that he self-destructed at the end of game 5, he was also perfectly fine for the first half of game 5. He self-destructed at the end of game 5. He was a below replacement level goaltender in game 6, and then he was replaced in game 7 by Tristan Jarry. If he would have started off the way that he finished, I would have agreed with you. I would have said, you know what? It was a tough decision. He's a backup. That is his job, though. But it's a tough situation. But the fact that he was okay, and then he went to being, I would have rather seen an emergency backup goaltender, because that's how he was playing. Those were the goals he was allowing in. E-bug goals.
Yeah.
Goals from the point that hit off of him, went straight up, and rolled right behind him. They were awful goals. If he would have got more playing time in the NHL, that doesn't change the fact that he was fine at the beginning of that series. He was perfectly fine in triple overtime, whatever it was, in game 1. He was perfectly fine in game 2, in game 3, in game 4, and then he self-destructed, and then he became below replacement level. So I don't think that argument has any weight to me, because I think that he just became back to what he was, because he played above his head for the first couple of games, and then he regressed back to what he can do. Nothing wrong with that. Like I said, he's a fine third-string goaltender, but don't try to argue that he would have been better if he would have played more in the regular season, because he started out perfectly fine, and then as time went on, he regressed back to what he actually is, which is a third-stringer, somebody who should not be in a playoff series against a team worth any weight at all.
Started out perfectly fine. He gave up 5 goals in his first game, 4 in his second, 2 in his third. There's the improvement. 5-5. He averaged giving up like 5 goals a game. I mean,
I'm looking at the quality of goals. The end of game 5, that comeback, whenever the Penguins were up 2-0, those 3 goals in the last half of the second period, and then all the goals in game 5, I could have scored shooting with my feet.
Kicking goals, no goal.
Shooting with my feet. Take the stick in between my feet, shooting. That's how bad it was. And there were people still saying that he should start over Tristan Jarry.
Disgusting. That was bad. That was bad. Did not agree with that at all. That was terrible. Those were terrible takes.
Yes.
I mean, you look at the numbers. Domingue he picked up 3 wins somehow. He had an .898 save percentage, and what was the goals against? It had to be high as hell.
3.65. Yeah.
He gave up like 5 goals a game.
Yeah.
It's not ideal. I'm not saying either of them should be back. I'm just saying one of them may, if let's say they went with, again, I'm just talking revisionist history here. Yeah. Let's say we had gotten rid of DeSmith at the deadline and brought Domingue up. Maybe he's just caught up to game speed. Sure, that last goal in game 6 was, oh God, it still haunts me watching it just float up in the air like that.
Yep.
But I don't know. I don't know. And someone popped the video on Twitter of him doing it in New Jersey. Thanks. Didn't need that in my life. That this is just a consistent thing. But hey, you know what? Regardless, we need new backup.
Okay. Well, in my opinion, Domingue is not the backup.
No, I'm not saying he
DeSmith
is
may
either.
be an option if there's nothing better. But that's the problem.
You want me to read down some names?
Yeah, just really quickly, and then we'll finish this off with our Pens poll.
All right, I'll just tell me when to stop because we are already aware of Marc-Andre Fleury. Then there's Mikko Koskinen, Darcy Kemper. Those guys aren't happening.
No.
Thomas Greiss, no thanks. Martin Jones, no thanks. Braden Holtby's been interesting and has been around discussions. Jack Campbell, no thanks. Pollock, no thanks. There's DeSmith. Dave Rittich. There, I'll stop it there because that's 10.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain names out there like Jaro Halak that I would think of over DeSmith.
Mm-hmm.
But again, not very many that I'm willing to pay because a lot of those, Holtby, chief among them, is going to cost a little bit more than you already paid Casey DeSmith.
Right. And like I said, this is a discussion we can have another time where I roll down more of this list. But those were just the top 10 on this on Cap Friendly based on
previous cap hits.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, that's 41 minutes of a goaltending conversation with a little bit of Phil Kessel sprinkled in there. But we're going to finish off this week's episode, or this Monday episode, I should say, with our weekly Pens poll. We've talked about the Brian Rust contract ad nauseum at this point. This is probably going to be the last actual segment that we devote to it because it's been 3 straight episodes. But the question last week, because it was fresh on everybody's mind, what worries you most about Brian Rust's new contract? Seems like everybody loves it because 71% of voters said that there is nothing wrong with this contract. It is great. 24% said, yeah, the term bothers me a little bit. And only 5% said the price. So clearly everybody likes the price we got Rust for. A couple of people are like, yeah, that's a little long for a 30-year-old. But the majority of people are like, yeah, this is a great deal, which kind of sums up what we've thought the entire way through, that, hey, 6 years is a little long. 3 years of no move clause is something. But again, it's easy to pass off in the back.
Yeah. It's the front 3 years. And you put that up before we knew about that, right?
Yep. That was up on Monday. We learned about that on Wednesday.
Yeah. So that could have been a fourth option that would have gotten no votes because it was the front 3, not the back 3.
Yep.
Tell you what, there really is nothing wrong with this contract. If I had to pick a negative, it would be the length. But again, the no trade clause is in the front.
Yeah.
Easy out. All right. I enjoy the deal greatly.
Yeah, so do I. And I think a lot of Penguins Twitter, as we just saw that result, also enjoys it. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. We hope everybody goes out and enjoys the rest of their Memorial Day safely and has a lot of fun. And obviously back to work tomorrow. But nonetheless, we'll be here with a new episode on Thursday. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great week, Pens fans.